Well, I don't know to say good morning or good afternoon on the strike of 12. I don't know what we go with. Very good to be here. My name's Catherine Vincedozzi. I'm with Cognite, which is a Norwegian-based industrial data ops company. I'm a partner development director, so I work with a lot of partners across the EMEA region. And I'm presenting today with Rajesh.
Hi everyone, I'm Rajesh Gamata. I'm a principal solutions architect at AWS. So I lead a couple of AWS solutions like the Industrial Data Fabric and also work with many partners such as Cognite. I'm glad to present here on Cognite/AWS.
Thank you. So I'm going to kick off and then I will pass over to Rajesh. So we're going to talk about, how do we unlock the potential that exists within the industry and how Cognite and AWS are doing this jointly. So I think it's widely acknowledged that there's a massive potential to really shift the needle towards more productive, more sustainable, more reliable manufacturing. There's massive potential, and I think it's widely acknowledged that a lot of that potential sits in data. We talk about data transformation, data-centric, operations, and data democratization. Of course, generative AI is a massive buzzword, and everybody's striving towards that. And data is fundamental to us being able to deliver on those hopes and dreams of what we can do with generative AI. Being able to give access to data to the workers within industrial operations, the data that they need when they need it can help us really reduce costs. We can avoid unnecessary downtime, we can optimize maintenance schedules according to when equipment needs it, rather than when perhaps a vendor specifies it. Better visibility of the full suite of data from operational, IT, and engineering data is really the key to, speeding up our root cause analysis assessments for better production efficiencies. It's going to enable us to do better energy management, better assessment, measuring, and reduction of emissions and waste. It really will transform what our customers are trying to achieve by giving workers access to that data when they need it. The problem is, the industrial reality is very, very complicated. Unlike perhaps the finance industry and the retail industry that has very structured data that can be accessed fairly easily with SQL queries, the industrial reality is that we have multiple and diverse data sources. We have structured data that sits in the ERP systems for our assets, but then we have time series data that while that's relatively simple, it's a timestamp with a pressure data point, there are billions and probably even trillions of that data. We then add into that the complexity of the fact that we are trying to access engineering documents that probably exist in PDF documents in paper format that haven't been accessed in years. But actually, if we can get access to those data and combine it with the time data, with the asset data, with the work orders and the shift logs, there's a huge amount of value that can be gained. The problem is that we spend an awful lot of time trying to find that data. We all know where the initiatives that have been put in place to try and do this. We may have one successful POC, but trying to scale that POC from one unit to the rest of the site, let alone globally, requires rewriting of the applications, rewriting of those use cases, new connections, because of that enormously diverse and disaggregated data. So it's a huge challenge. Sadly, the challenge and the complication doesn't end there. If you can get all of that data together, the problem is it typically doesn't match. the data and the naming conventions that you have in SAP and that structured data absolutely won't match with the time series information. You know, this slide is, when we put this slide together, it almost becomes the one slide that we use, and we show it to customers and everybody starts nodding. Yeah, that's the problem. We have multiple different pieces of data that all relate to an asset, but there is the ability to connect that data is a nigh on impossible task because of this complete mismatch between naming conventions. So that human contextualization that's required to try and pull this data together takes a very long time. So this slide really shows, on the left-hand side, this is the challenge that we face. A frontline worker who is dealing with an unexpected downtime has to go to multiple places to find the different data. And then they have to use their understanding and their knowledge of those data sources, of the asset, of recognizing which is the pressure sensor information, which is the right work order, even what the actual asset is called on the shop floor because it looks different. That can take hours. We have a customer that has run this assessment and on a product quality issue, and for the point at which they identified a product quality issue to the time at which they identified what the correct resolution was 18 hours. That was 18 hours to find the data and relate it and find a resolution, not to actually resolve the problem and improve the product quality. What workers need, what industrial organizations need, is what you see on the right, and this is what we have been able to develop. This is the industrial canvas. This is one workspace that enables an engineer to pull up the P&ID diagram, find the heat exchanger on that P&ID diagram, and very quickly, in a matter of seconds or even sub-seconds, pull through all of the time series information that relates to that heat exchanger, access the maintenance and operations document that relates to that, and really and do that in seconds so that then they can spend 1 or 2 hours or less time, but actually use their time to finding the resolution and resolving that and really adding value, doing what it is that they need to do. So how do we do that? What we do is we're building an industrial knowledge graph that is able to make the connections between all of those mismatched data. One of the key pieces to this is what we call entity matching. Cognite was born out of an industrial conglomerate's need to be able to, in near real time, access all of this different data belonging to an asset. We have built industrial algorithms for machine learning and AI algorithms that look into the data as it is brought into Cognite Data Fusion and actually identify patterns. So we use we call it contextualization. It's building the relationships to build these semantic, meaningful relationships that persist, that are remembered, connects all of this data together so that engineers can get simple access to that complex industrial data very, very quickly. These contextualization algorithms are not just looking at the metadata or the titles on these documents. It actually goes into those work orders, into those shift logs, and looks through all of the information that's in there and builds the connections and the relationships, builds this industrial knowledge graph across all of that information to make those patterns. The real so what to all of this is that with Cognite Data Fusion within IDF from AWS, you have an open API that can then, any applications or dashboards that are built on top of Cognite Data Fusion and IDF, those applications can then be lifted and shifted very quickly to multiple units and multiple plants, global sites, because those applications that are built only need to connect to the open API and are not trying to connect to those underlying, ever-changing multiple data sources that exist. I'm going to hand over to Rajesh now, who's going to pick up a little bit more on some of the topics there.
Thanks, Catherine. So now in the next few slides, I'm going to be talking about how Cognite Data Fusion enables customers to have generative AI use cases for their processes. So many of you must be familiar with the phrase garbage in and garbage out, right? So when it comes to LLMs, garbage in equates to hallucinations. Because large language models primarily are trained on language where the context is inherent within that in the form of word orders, grammar, and much more. So, but in the case of industrial data, it lacks that context, right? If you're talking about a time series data, it's basically a value and a timestamp. It doesn't have any information with regards to the context, such as the unit of measures and much more. So what we need to have, or what we cannot expect, is to have the LLMs to basically deal with time series database or industrial data. So what we need to have is a context, and the way to provide the context for the industrial data is through the industrial knowledge graph. So with this industrial knowledge graph, users will be able to get a deterministic response to their prompted questions. Oh, I didn't change that. So when it comes to LLMs, it's a more probabilistic. So we need to have more a deterministic response to those questions. So we need to be able to reduce the more of hallucinations or creativity of the LLMs and increase the more reasoning capacity. The way we do it is in two approaches. One is the so-called Copilot agent, where we leverage the industrial knowledge graph to basically retrieve the deterministic response. The other way is retrieval augmented generation, RAG approach, where instead of querying the knowledge graph using an open API, we extract the information of the documents. So there are use cases where it is a combination of both Copilot as well as a retrieval augmented generation approach. But regardless, we need to have the context and the content provided to the LLM. So in short, we are saying to the LLM, you do not use your own data, use only the data which we provide through the knowledge graph. So with the knowledge graph as a main workhorse, Cognite Data Fusion enables you to ingest all the data, create the domain level models, and also create the industrial knowledge graph. So once I have that, in combination with AWS generative AI services, you will be able to create a platform that caters to those industrial use cases. So to that end, we can have different data sets for different use cases. It can be for quality advisor or a maintenance advisor or an engineering advisor, where we ingest documents such as engineering design documents, telemetry data from sensors, emails, and much more. And with the combination of both, we will be able to give a more deterministic response, which the users can trust. Now, I'll give it back to Catherine. She will take you through one of the customer use cases.
Thank you, Rajesh. So one of our customers, Celanese, who is one of the largest chemical manufacturers based over in the US, we worked with them, and I think what they have done, leveraging Cognite Data Fusion and leveraging this industrial data factory, really demonstrates the power of the industrial knowledge graph, the ability to finally contextualize and build those relationships to give access, not only give users very quick access to the data, but enable Celanese to scale. So what Celanese did was they took, over the course of 3 months, they deployed Cognite Data Fusion on one of their acetic acid units. 3 use cases, a few data sources, built that industrial knowledge graph, and then built the applications on top of Cognite Data Fusion that they wanted to deploy. One of the tremendous value points is enabling field workers, when they're working in the field, to actually access this industrial knowledge graph, access all of their data from a mobile device. Really putting the data, all of that data, at the fingertips of the people that are in the field. And this is an example of one of those use cases and 2 field workers that are out just doing maintenance rounds and spot that there is a leak on one of those units. I'm just going to quickly go through this to show you. So, on their mobile device, they've got access to Cognite Data Fusion, and they can use the Data Explorer to look up information on the particular heat exchanger. And using the Copilot capability, so we have these generative AI capabilities built in already that allows or enables users to create summaries very quickly of a document. So rather than having to read a 100-page document, you can ask for a summary of the document, but also ask questions. So the Copilot tool can really help workers to quickly ask a question. And so what's happened here is the Copilot tool has recommended that, or has brought up these 3 pieces. We've got an equipment picture, a PNID, and the 3D model. All being done, dynamically, a matter of seconds on that mobile device in the field. So they've brought that into Canvas. They could look at them individually, but they've actually brought them into Canvas, which is that interactive, almost like a Miro board workspace, where they can then view that data together. There's a lot of equipment to look at, though. So they decide, well, look, let's run another AI query and say, look, just show me the equipment that just contains liquid products. So by asking the question for just the liquid products, what they're now looking at here is a new diagram that's just showing the equipment that contains liquid. They want to dig a bit deeper, so let's see if there have been any work orders done over the last 2 days. So again, ask the question, show me, has there been any work orders or any work orders, any maintenance been done in the last 2 days? Ask that question of Copilot. And now we can see that actually there was a valve replacement that was recently completed where they're seeing this liquid. So the engineer can bring up a time series of that information and can see that there was a steep pressure drop that happened not long after that valve replacement in this location. So he updates the field operator on what he's found, and he's also going to set up a monitoring job to say, look, alert me if there are any further pressure drops on this. So what we can see here is the power and the tool. That simplifies really what's happening there is that those workers have got real-time access to multiple different types of data, all connected through that industrial knowledge graph, and then leveraging the generative AI capabilities that are enabled with Cognite Data Fusion sitting within Industrial Data Fabric from AWS. Call to action for you, if you have shift workers that are spending 1 or 2 hours a day just trying to find data, come see us, come and have a demo, come and talk to us about what generative AI capabilities we have today, what we are developing in the future, and come and have a demo and learn more about Cognite Data Fusion on AWS. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, of course, please do. I don't know whether it's possible to ask questions here, it's quite noisy. It is.
I'm sure that you also have the pain of creating the knowledge graph. I highly encourage you to go to the Cognite booth, which is just behind this wall, and you will be able to see how Cognite Data Fusion very quickly does the entity data matching, create the domain models, and the knowledge graph.
Thank you.
Thank you.